Ferrari may have just exposed a hidden crisis inside the SF-26, and Charles Leclerc's own radio messages made the situation impossible to hide anymore. Because while Lewis Hamilton celebrated Ferrari's strongest result of the season in Canada, Leclerc sounded completely broken on the other side of the garage. Not frustrated, broken. At one point after the race, Leclerc admitted he felt like he was going to crash at almost every corner because the tires never entered the correct operating window. Think about how extreme that sounds from a driver of his level. This is Charles Leclerc, one of the fastest qualifiers in modern Formula One, a driver known for adapting aggressively to difficult cars. And in Canada, he looked completely lost. Meanwhile, Hamilton looked like a completely different reality inside the exact same Ferrari. Second place finish, an incredible late battle against Max Verstappen, and the happiest Hamilton has sounded since arriving in Maranello. That contrast is now creating massive tension inside Ferrari, because when one elite driver suddenly understands a car perfectly, while the other cannot trust it for a single lap, teams start fearing something much deeper than set of problems, especially under the brutal new 2026 regulations. And this is where the story becomes genuinely dangerous for Ferrari. Leclerc admitted the problem started from the very first practice session and never disappeared all weekend. No tire confidence, no brake feeling, no consistency. And now people inside the paddock are asking a terrifying question. Does Ferrari actually understand the SF-26 at all? Because while Hamilton celebrated the podium, he also admitted Ferrari still cannot match Mercedes in straight-line speed. According to reports after Canada, Ferrari may already be down between 22 and 25 horsepower compared to Mercedes. That is enormous. And now the FIA is closely monitoring Ferrari's situation through the ADUO development system, the mechanism designed to help manufacturers falling behind under the new engine regulations. Think about how humiliating that sounds for Ferrari, the most legendary engine name in Formula One history, potentially needing technical recovery, support just to stay competitive. And the terrifying part is this. Canada may not have been Ferrari's breakthrough weekend. It may have been the moment the SF-26 crisis finally became impossible to hide. From the very first laps in Canada, something felt completely wrong inside Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. Not slow, unstable. And that difference matters enormously in Formula One, because drivers can fight through a lack of pace. What destroys confidence is unpredictability. The terrifying part for Ferrari is that Leclerc started feeling those problems almost immediately during the weekend. Not during qualifying, not during the race, from the very first practice session. And according to Leclerc himself, the feeling never improved. The tires refused to enter the correct operating window. The brakes never felt consistent. The balance constantly shifted underneath him. Imagine trying to sprint across wet ice while someone changes your shoes every few seconds. That is basically what driving an unstable Formula One car feels like. Every corner becomes a guess. And for a driver like Leclerc, who relies heavily on instinct and confidence under braking, that kind of instability becomes emotionally exhausting very quickly. That is why his comments after the race sounded so brutal. He openly described Canada as one of the worst weekends of his entire Formula One career. Not one bad session. The entire weekend. That sentence alone should terrify Ferrari, because Leclerc is normally one of the best drivers on the grid at adapting to difficult cars. When someone with that level of natural feel suddenly cannot trust the car for a single lap, teams start worrying about deeper structural issues, especially because the contrast with Lewis Hamilton could not have been more extreme. Hamilton looked calm all weekend, confident on the brakes, strong during long runs, completely in control during the final battle against Verstappen. And after the race, Hamilton sounded happier than at any other moment since joining Ferrari. He openly admitted he finally feels connected to the SF-26 and understands how to extract performance from it properly. That difference immediately created dangerous questions inside the paddock. How can one elite driver suddenly unlock the car while the other completely loses confidence in the exact same machinery? And Ferrari itself may not fully know the answer. Frederic Vasseur admitted after the race that the team still needs to understand why there is such a large inconsistency between both drivers on the same circuits. That statement matters enormously, because Formula One teams usually understand their cars very precisely by this stage of the season. If Ferrari is still confused about why the SF-26 behaves so differently depending on setup direction or driving style, then the development process itself becomes dangerous. Think about trying to fix a phone when the screen freezes randomly without warning. Sometimes it works perfectly. Sometimes it completely breaks. And because the issue is inconsistent, every solution feels like guesswork. That may now be happening inside Ferrari. And the timing could not be worse. Because while Ferrari struggles to fully understand its own car, Mercedes keeps evolving aggressively. Canada exposed that brutally. Mercedes brought major upgrades and immediately looked dominant. Ferrari brought no updates at all. That gap suddenly feels enormous. Especially after Hamilton admitted Ferrari still cannot match Mercedes in straight-line speed. And according to reports after the race, Ferrari may already be down between 22 and 25 horsepower. That is not a small disadvantage. That is structural weakness. Especially under the brutal new 2026 regulations where electrical deployment and acceleration define huge parts of race pace. And now the FIA is watching closely through the ADUO development system, the mechanism designed to help manufacturers falling behind in engine performance. Think about how shocking that sounds for Ferrari, the most iconic engine manufacturer in Formula One history, potentially needing technical recovery support just to stay competitive. But internally, the emotional tension may be becoming even more dangerous. Because after Canada, Hamilton looks emotionally connected to the future of the project. Leclerc suddenly looks emotionally exhausted by it. And once that emotional imbalance appears inside Ferrari, pressure usually explodes very quickly. And this is where Ferrari's situation becomes genuinely dangerous. Because after Canada, the problem no longer looks like a simple lack of performance. Now it looks like Ferrari may be building the future of the team around a car only one driver can truly understand. And if that sounds extreme, look at the emotional state inside the garage after the race. Hamilton looked relieved. Leclerc looked defeated. That contrast matters more than lap times, because Formula One drivers rely heavily on confidence. When confidence disappears, performance collapses faster than people realize. And Leclerc's comments after Canada sounded like a driver fighting the car mentally, not just physically. He admitted the tires fell completely outside their working window all weekend. No consistency, no trust under braking, no rhythm through corners. At one point, he openly said he felt like he was going to hit the wall at every corner because the balance never felt stable. That is not normal frustration. That is emotional exhaustion, especially from a driver who historically builds confidence faster than almost anyone else on the grid. And here's what makes the situation even more uncomfortable for Ferrari. Hamilton experienced the exact opposite emotionally. For the first time since arriving at Ferrari, he sounded genuinely connected to the SF-26. Not just comfortable, connected. That difference creates huge internal pressure immediately. Because now Ferrari faces a dangerous possibility. What if the car naturally fits Hamilton's driving style better than Leclerc's under the new regulations? That question changes everything moving forward. Because Formula One teams cannot easily redesign an entire car philosophy in the middle of a season. Especially not while chasing Mercedes. And the timing could not be worse. Mercedes is evolving aggressively. McLaren continues improving. Red Bull keeps searching for performance. Meanwhile, Ferrari still brought no upgrades to Canada at all. That decision suddenly feels incredibly costly. Because while Hamilton's podium created positive headlines, the bigger championship picture became brutal. Mercedes increased the Constructors' Championship gap to 98 points after Canada. That is massive. And inside Ferrari, pressure rises differently compared to every other team. At Ferrari, performance problems become emotional immediately. Every weakness becomes political. Every driver comment becomes a national discussion. Every technical issue creates pressure from outside the garage itself. And now the SF-26 suddenly looks emotionally unstable inside the team. One driver finally trusts the car. The other does not trust it at all. That imbalance creates another hidden danger. Development direction. Because if Ferrari now follows Hamilton's setup philosophy more aggressively after Canada, Leclerc could feel increasingly disconnected from the project. But if Ferrari changes direction to help Leclerc recover confidence, they risk slowing down the progress Hamilton finally discovered. That is the trap Ferrari may now be entering. And underneath all of this sits the biggest fear of all, the engine deficit. Hamilton openly admitted Ferrari still cannot match Mercedes on the straights. And according to reports after the race, the gap may already be between 22 and 25 horsepower. In Formula One, that is enormous. Especially because the weakness appears structural, not temporary. Meaning setup changes alone cannot solve it. The problem may be built directly into the power unit philosophy itself. That is why the FIA's monitoring of the ADUO system suddenly became such a huge story after Canada. Because Ferrari could potentially receive extra development opportunities if the deficit is officially confirmed strongly enough through the data. Think about how dramatic that sounds. Ferrari needing technical recovery support under the new regulations just to keep up with Mercedes. And this is where the emotional pressure inside the garage could become even more dangerous moving forward. Hamilton now sees hope. Leclerc sees confusion. One driver feels progress. The other feels trapped inside a car he no longer fully understands. And history shows something important about Ferrari. When uncertainty starts growing inside the team, tension usually follows very quickly, especially when the championship is already starting to slip away. And now Ferrari faces the most dangerous question possible for a team already under pressure. What happens if Charles Leclerc starts losing faith in the entire project? Because after Canada, this no longer feels like a driver simply struggling with setup. It feels psychological now. And Formula One becomes incredibly brutal once confidence starts collapsing mentally. Think about everything Leclerc experienced during the weekend. From the very first practice session, the car felt unstable. The tires never entered the proper temperature window. The brakes never inspired confidence. Every corner felt unpredictable. Then while he spent the entire weekend searching desperately for answers, Lewis Hamilton suddenly looked completely transformed inside the exact same machinery. That emotional contrast is extremely dangerous inside Formula One teams, because drivers naturally start asking themselves difficult questions. Is the car evolving in the wrong direction for my style? Am I losing confidence or losing connection with the project itself? Why does my teammates suddenly look comfortable while I feel completely lost? Those thoughts slowly become toxic, especially at Ferrari, because Ferrari is not a calm environment when pressure rises. Every race becomes emotional. Every radio message gets analyzed. Every frustrated comment becomes a headline across Italy within minutes. And Leclerc's comments after Canada carried genuine emotional weight. He openly blamed himself while also admitting the car never gave him confidence for a single lap. That combination matters enormously, because when elite drivers start blaming themselves for problems they cannot fully understand, frustration usually becomes internalized. And once frustration turns inward, confidence drops even faster. Meanwhile, Hamilton's confidence is suddenly growing at exactly the wrong time for Leclerc. Hamilton now sounds emotionally connected to the SF-26 for the first time all season. He understands the setup better, understands how to manage the tires better, understands how to unlock pace from the car under pressure. That changes the emotional balance inside Ferrari immediately. Because now, for the first time since Hamilton arrived, the project may slowly begin shifting toward his direction naturally. Not politically. Emotionally, teams always gravitate toward confidence and momentum. And after Canada, Hamilton suddenly carries both. That creates another hidden pressure point Ferrari cannot easily control: development philosophy. Because if Ferrari continues moving toward the setup concepts Hamilton prefers, Leclerc risks becoming even more disconnected from the car moving forward. But if Ferrari changes direction aggressively to help Leclerc recover confidence, they risk slowing down the progress Hamilton finally discovered. That is the trap Ferrari may now be entering. And the terrifying part is that none of this solves the team's biggest technical weakness anyway. The engine deficit still exists. Hamilton confirmed it publicly after the race. Ferrari still cannot match Mercedes on the straights. And under the new 2026 regulations, straight-line performance is no longer just about raw horsepower. It is about energy deployment efficiency. How effectively the hybrid systems recover and release electrical energy during acceleration zones. Mercedes appears to have mastered that balance earlier than everyone else. Ferrari has not. And according to reports after Canada, the deficit may already be structural, meaning Ferrari may not fully solve it until major future development cycles. That possibility changes the emotional pressure inside the team dramatically, because now every race starts feeling urgent. Every weekend becomes a balancing act between development, confidence, and survival in the championship fight. And Canada may have exposed something Ferrari never wanted to reveal publicly. The SF-26 might not simply be difficult. It might be unpredictable. For one driver, that unpredictability currently feels manageable. For the other, it feels like a complete loss of trust. And once trust disappears inside a Formula One garage, the pressure rarely stays hidden for long.